Thank you everyone for coming to our live stream today. It's about why durations matter and the hidden driver of successful projects. Thanks for registering and showing up today. I'm here with Lewis, our VP of Operations. He's our super smart feller who helps onboard a lot of our customers and keeps things smooth at Moovila. So we all love him, grateful for him. And we have Jeremy Barnes, who is Senior Project Manager at Network Essentials too. So glad to have him here today. He's super knowledgeable. He's one of our customers too, but probably talk about lots of other things. And he's pretty active in our Discord group in MSP Geek too. So I'll send you the link to how to join that if you want to later. But anywho, let's get into fun facts. Oh, and I'm Colleen. So
Yeah,
in case you don't
don't
know
knock
who I am.
yourself over there.
Yeah, that's just the small details. More interested in the fun facts.
You want me to go first?
Please.
All right. Do you want a fact about Yoko Ono, or do you want a fact about great white sharks?
Um, I've been dying to hear about what you're reading about Yoko Ono in your book.
Yeah, yeah. I did just finish a biography on Yoko Ono. Fascinating because everybody here's like, she just broke the Beatles up, and you don't know much about her. And David Sheff wrote a biography on her, and David Sheff wrote Beautiful Boy. If anybody read that, which was a movie, he's awesome. He was a journalist for the Rolling Stone in the 70s, 80s. So just finished that awesome book. But Yoko Ono's mom was from like the fourth wealthiest family in Japan in the early 20th century. Yeah. Yeah. Jeremy's shaking his head like he knows, like he's got a lot of Yoko Ono facts too.
I don't know if they're facts or not, but
Okay.
I've heard lots of things about
Yeah. Yeah.
her.
So, but prior to World War II, her mom's family, fourth wealthiest in Japan, lived just lavish lifestyle. And then when World War II came around, her family had to flee to the mountains living in a shack. And so she had this super crazy dynamic childhood, which led to why she was so creative and imaginative because she had a daydream so much. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's a really good fun fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. All
Yeah.
right, Jeremy. Let us hear it.
All right, so I've got a really good fun fact. It's about cows. Moovilla. You guys have the cow mascot. Cows have accents depending on where they're born, and they also have best friends, and will get depressed when separated from their friends. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
What?
absolutely. Yep.
We are definitely going to hijack some of those for some marketing campaigns, I would think now. So we'll give you credit though.
Glad to help you guys out on that front.
Oh my gosh. I cannot wait until Amanda watches this. Oh, this is gonna be great. Amanda's our VP of Brand and Creative. She's gonna love that fact. Well, you know what? I don't even know what to say after that. That was spectacular. How do we start talking about durations after talking about such cool fun facts?
How long cows are away from their best friends? I don't know.
That is a really good segue. Speaking of cows, let's talk about how long cows are away from their best friends. Why don't we talk about what a duration is at first? Just super quick overview before we start ripping.
Yeah. You want me to do that one?
Sure.
Sure.
Cool. Yeah. So and this is one of our favorite topics here at Mooville and near and dear to our heart. And we're gonna let Jeremy do most of the talking today because he lives in the real world where we get to live in the pretend world and just talk about projects. Jeremy manages them, does them, has handled every aspect of those too. But everyone's familiar with your budgeted hours or your work estimate, right? I've budgeted that doing task A will take me 1 hour. I go and do task A, I log my time, and I see how I compare against that budget. Your duration is a different object, right? And your duration is going to be how many days it will take you to complete task A. We like to call it the work window a lot of times, but sure, it might take me 1 hour of my time that I'm going to log to complete that work, but there could be back and forth with the customer, and I send an initial email and I wait for a response, and then I have to do something. So that's all encompassed in task A, and that duration is going to be how long does that take? Is it 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, right? And that duration is really what drives your overall timeline on that project, right? So that is where,
Absolutely.
yeah, Jeremy, go, 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 go.
Yeah, so, as far as like durations go, it is such a big understanding to make sure that how to forecast, your future projects coming up. If you've got a task in there that, the amount of work may take you 4 hours to do, but you may be waiting on some third-party vendor, to get something, and that could take you somewhere between, an extra day. It could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You need to define that in your project up front, because if you don't have that, as you're just going through and you're just looking at that budget hour compared to what you've done, you're not going to see that, oh, hey, this task, is 4 hours of work, but it really takes 3 weeks to actually get this task completed, just because, again, there's factors beyond your control of what you can do on the project itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people we work with coming from PSAs and really just anybody coming into project management, durations importance varies for some people. Some people, all they think about is durations. They don't care about budgeted hours because they're working with third party contractors, vendors, types of things, and they're assembling the pieces. MSP space, everyone's laser focused on hours, right? That is your biggest cost of goods. And so they're not as used to how to handle durations. And so a couple things that we'll work through with people and that we like to have people think about. And actually, Jared sent me a cheat sheet, our director of customer success, because Jared is he's got it. He knows it, right? But essentially, if you think about you've got 40 hours of work to do and you have 8 hours a day, right? It's going to be 5 days of duration, right? So you're going to do all 40 hours over the course of 1 week. Now that's at redlining 100% utilization there, right? If you say, well, let me plan 50% allocation because I have, a little bit of service tickets on that, a little bit of other things, then you've got 10 days duration. Again, take it down a step further, 25% allocation would be 20 days duration. And, start to think about for y'all, and Jeremy, interested to hear what your take on it. A lot of people will think like, all right, if I've got 2 hours of work, I'm going to assume 2 days of duration just to give myself some buffer, right? And then you use that as your multiplier and you go out from there.
Absolutely. Moovila really helped open our eyes to duration. When we went through and refactored all our templates to take in count of duration, it really changed how long we realized project execution was going to take. Beforehand, we were taking and looking, oh, hey, yeah, this project's 40 hours. We'll have it done in a week. Were we actually getting it done? No, it's taking us 2 weeks. I get escalations, something goes wrong, all that time in there wasn't being factored in. So, there's just a lot of reasons why you got to really factor in durations. It'll go as far as even if you've got good durations on your projects, good forecasting when your sales department is selling a project and letting the customer know what that sales and project pipeline looks like. Hey, we're not going to be able to actually start this out for another 2 months. I can see that based off of the duration of the existing projects and how much completion of those projects is, and we can see clearly, there's just not enough time in the work week to squeeze that in. It really allows us to get better with our delivery, making sure that, customers are happy. I don't think I've had a single customer that's been upset that we couldn't start a project immediately. I think I've had more customers upset that we told them that, yeah, we'll have this done by this date, and we missed it completely because we had so much work backed up prior.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's pretty wild if you've never looked at your durations and just even maybe looking at a template or a new project or something and projects that incorporate hardware are really good examples for you to review duration on because there's always typically some sort of lead time. A lot of people aren't keeping their hardware in stock. But if you go through the activity, you're like, okay, we start every project the same way, like Jeremy said. You're not gonna they sign the contract, you're not starting the next day. There's that handoff, that scope review, that work plan build out, internal kickoff, customer kickoff. Before you talk to the customer, it's at least 1 week, right? Like if all those things happen quickly, right? Maybe 1 week, but really it's like 2, 3 weeks. And that's the duration, right? And then that plays into when the delivery piece can come. You tie hardware into that too. And you say, and depending on when you bill for hardware and when you order hardware, and if you take the stance of we're not going to start any work until a deposit's received, or we're not going to order equipment until we have the customer kickoff, and then you put your equipment task milestone, whatever you use, off of the client kickoff, and it takes 3 weeks to come in, you're at 6 weeks before you even start, if you have to do any configuration on that. So customer signed at January 1st, you're 6 weeks, you're in the middle of February before you actually start any delivery. If I'm a customer, right, and if you don't manage that conversation and those expectations and you don't understand it, I'm gonna be like, what are you guys doing?
Absolutely. And again, prior before coming into Moovila, we wouldn't even see the project until equipment had arrived in our office. So we couldn't do any prep work of anything that needed to be done to make sure, whatever migrations we were doing, we're going to go smooth, make sure that the environment was right, just double check all the backups were good. Since we've updated our processes now, as soon as the client signs that dotted line, it's now a project, next day. We have, within that first couple of days, that internal scope review, make sure everything was correct. Sales has kicked off and kicked over to procurement to purchase equipment. So all that stuff is already in play. Before we even get the hardware now, I've scoped out, approximately when that hardware should be in, have the kickoff call with the customer and start looking at that forecasted and budgeted dates where things lie. Let them know, hey, this is what we're looking at. If everything looks good, we turn around and put hard, solid schedules on everything, and then it's booked. I now have something very structured, very hard and rigid to work off of. Whereas before Moovila, I mean, it kind of just out of ConnectWise was, all right, here's everything that we need to get done, just have at it. We weren't really structuring, we weren't really doing that grid of communication, either internally or with the customer. It's really helped us understand like where we were failing in our process management and projects.
Yeah, and
Jeremy,
oh, go ahead, Colleen. Yeah.
I have a question on what he's saying. So talking about setting up more efficient project process at your MSP, I'm curious, why do you think a lot of MSPs overlook durations in their project process? And anyone in the chat, if you got anything for why your MSPs leaving out durations or overlooking them in your project process.
I can tell you, been in the MSP industry over 20 years. About 10 years of that, I was, project management and execution on that. I can say bottom line MSPs, when it comes to projects, the only thing that they're really looking at is that gross margin on the labor. That's the number one driving factor in if it was a successful project or not, was did they make profit off of it? And the thing that really helped me realize again is if you're not communicating, you don't have good templates, you don't have durations on your task, you don't go even further on the steps or in the ConnectWise world, your actual ticket tasks, and define how long those are taking, you'll never get better at scoping, you'll never get better at execution because you're not tracking how long it's actually taking to do things, whether it's the duration or the actual execution of it. And that was a big eye opener. We realized that we were leaving a lot of hours on the table that we weren't accounting for in the processes. We weren't getting nitty and picky into our templates beforehand. It was just real high level overview stuff. So when it came time for sales to scope and conversations, when we look back at the existing projects, all we could see is, did we make money off of it or did we not? Now we can actually go back in, compare time entries. We compare, well, it's really nice with Moovila. We can go in and compare our templates and look and see, how did each project stack up against that template? Did we go over on that project? Did we go way under? It's really helped us understand what we're not scoping right and what we didn't have a good understanding of how long it was really taking us to execute on. And that's big. I mean, that's a lot of money being left on the table. And that's probably the difference between what would have made previous projects successful and profitable versus not meeting that threshold and it, not really being something that was beneficial for our organization.
Yeah, and I want to say too, um, we didn't bring Jeremy here to tout Moovila, right? And no matter what system you're using, just start to think about durations, right? Like if you're going to start anywhere, just find an old project, open it up and say, okay, the start date on the project was when the client signed the contract and we converted it. Well, on what date was our first time entry and on what date was our last time entry, right? Just look at the overall thing and be like, oh my gosh, they signed that thing here. We didn't, our first time entry was 3 weeks later. Just compare those 3 dates, right? Just pull a record and look at the overall duration. That's a great place to start on this. Again, and to Jeremy's point, he's done all this. He's done the execution piece. He's done it. And Jeremy, my question for you, selfishly, because we work with a lot of people, and it understanding durations and utilizing them is not easy, right? It sounds easy, and we can talk about it.
It
And again, we live in pretend world, and not everyone gets it. You
It took me
get it.
2 months to really grasp the importance of what the duration is, really how that affected like the timeline of the project, or even like the critical path view, which is just another awesome feature in Moovila. It's just all that type of analytics and everything there with the durations. We weren't doing that beforehand. So, we beforehand were just kind of saying, you know what, this project started this quarter, it should end either this quarter or at the end of the next quarter. So when we were looking at that, we weren't really taking any consideration of what type of work we were doing and really, again, how long that should be taking an engineer's focus or pulling them out of, service desk management work, depending on how you're structuring your organization. It's going to be a big driver factor on that. It's going to be a big driver factor of when you need to schedule people out. It does you no good to throw someone on a schedule saying, yeah, I need you to go out on site to do these tasks. And if you go through and you're just not taking durations into considering, oh yeah, that should be the fourth day, because that's, we've eaten up about 30 hours and you schedule them for that Thursday, you're not ready for it. You've now wasted more time by dispatching someone out, or wasting more time on the project management side because you schedule someone and nope, you got to move it over. You got to notify them. It's just not having that duration defined. It's really hindering the overall project performance. It's going to cause you to do more work on the management side than what you needed to do in the first place. What I realized is, on the durations, something, yeah, it should be, one day, one day, one day. Let's go ahead and put an extra space day in between it, 2 days. There's nothing wrong with us being able to start that next ticket or that next task early, but we want to have that wiggle room for if something goes wrong. We usually think of terms of, technical things that go wrong, but you never know when someone's going to win that lottery ticket. Things happen. If you've got that kind of already spaced out well enough, it's going to give you time as the project manager to recover that project and get it back on track before it's a client facing issue, to where then you now have to have conversations with the client of telling them why the project is now derailed, or facing the project may completely fail, depending on what you're doing. So it's having those durations is pretty critical in my mind, and just really, yeah, just coming on to Moovila and really taking a open ear into what the non managed service clients were kind of doing with their projects, I think really helped us up our game quite a bit. We were able to take, the stuff that you guys have advised us from, non-MSPs and apply it into our MSP world. And again, projects I feel have moved so much smoother since there. I know I'm getting the project management stuff done versus just saying, yeah, it's at this just off of memory. So
Yeah, yeah. You said something in there too, Jeremy, about, somebody wins the lottery, things happen, and that is so key because that is where the durations really come into play, right? Like you said, if you've got 40 hours, yeah, we can get it done in 1 week, but things always happen. That is why Moovila exists. That is why project managers exist. Things always happen, and there are a lot of people out there, they refer to those things as black swans, excuse me, where customer calls and picks up in the middle of the project and like, nah, we just got our budget slashed, we can't do this anymore, right? Or customer calls and says our stakeholder left, so now we got to get a new stakeholder in, so then it drags longer. And so the longer that project is open, the longer that you can't bill for it and you don't bill for it, right? Potentially jeopardizing revenue and cash flow if you're billing for that at the end of the project or progress billing that along. The longer it's open, the more of a chance you have for those black swans and for those things to happen. And this isn't a Lewis theory. This is a project management out there all over the place. One of the better pieces I've read that really helped for me that it click is called How Big Things Get Done. I think I talked about it on the last webinar too. But essentially, the longer it's open, the more things go wrong, right? The more things, opportunity for something to happen. I'm going to throw another fun fact in, Colleen. I know I'm not allowed to, but in that book, one of the biggest examples that they talk about are the Olympics. And now it's, the Olympics right now. And I was sitting with my wife last night critiquing triple axles. Like I know what I'm talking about. I have no clue. But the Olympic Games, the build out for Olympic Games, the mean cost overrun is 150%, right? It's because that window's open so long and things go wrong and you run into things that cost more that you don't expect to cost more. And that's why one of the durations, not knowing those durations and those going on forever, one of the reasons why we see so much overrun on budget, right? And then of course, customer satisfaction.
yeah.
Yeah.
So why do these problems tend to repeat themselves instead of getting fixed if you're seeing the problems happening over and over again and you're not addressing, improving your durations or making them more accurate?
It's a process management factor. Beforehand, we weren't going back after a project closed and doing a what we now call a post-mortem of the project. Our post-mortem project meetings are now focused on, the financials first off, did we make money off of it? Then we dive into, did we scope it correctly? That way, we have the sales engineer that, built out the proposal in there. That way we can get feedback on the project execution to sales. Did we skip something in the sales process? Did we not make sure that the customer was pre-informed before this decision that they were going to have to do X, Y, and Z for this project to be successful. Just making sure that we get, our I's dotted, T's crossed a little bit better for the next time that we go up on it. We take the time to look at time records, compare those against the template. If we're noticing that, hey, this Moovila task ConnectWise ticket, we had it budgeted for 2 hours. It's really taken us 2.5 hours on this. Well, let's go ahead and go up that template hour budget up some. That way we know the next time that we're quoting this out, we need additional time on that. Or even the vice versa. Hey, we had 2 hours budgeted for this, but we knock it out in 45 minutes every time. Let's go ahead and drop that down hour and a half. Where do we want to put that gap in there? That lets us know, again, where we're executing correctly, where we're not. It could be a situation where we had a newer, greener tech that hadn't done this type of work before. Maybe we didn't have instructions on the template laid out well enough to where they can just pick up and run with it. Maybe we need to get them trained a little bit better so that they can pick up on it. It lets us know more of where we're failing internally on our internal organization, training, processes. project management of making sure that, again, it's smooth execution all the way. It just goes a long way. We can also figure out, oh, you know what, we didn't have the right skilled tech on that. We put that as a tier 1 tech, but you know what? We really need to have that as a tier 3 tech because of what we're doing. It puts that focus back on to, how we can improve, not just, overall what we could have done better on that project, but how can we take the lessons learned there and apply it moving forward.
Great. Yeah. So you kind of started talking about it a little bit. Like the example was like how this impacts the tech, right? How do inaccurate durations affect technicians on a day-to-day basis that you've seen?
Well, if we don't have the correct duration of how long it takes them to have the scheduled task in there, especially if I'm pulling in like a service desk resource, it completely throws that whole department out of whack. If I had in there that, oh, if I only need them for a day, but I needed them for 2 days, and now I have to struggle with their manager to get them back out on site to do it, it's again, it's a lot more work for us internally on the management side. Whereas if I had that up front, oh, I'm going to need them 2 days, have that plan for it. We wrapped up in 1 day and I don't need them for that second day. I can let them go back to their service desk, role there, and it's not an issue. The second that we have to start questioning about scheduling, I mean, that's a whole other department schedule that we just threw out of whack on that. And that's one that, my leadership does not like it when I do that.
Yeah, it's you're, again, you got to live in the real world, right? And you've got to know when to push and where not to push too, right? And so one of my examples, kind of along the same lines, right? I came from manufacturing, and we did all the projects were new facilities, build outs of facilities, new lines, and I'm just rolling with fun facts today. Primarily was personal care products, so soap and hand sanitizer, and so we would build lines that would make 100 pieces a minute, 200 pieces a minute, 300 pieces a minute, 300 bottles of soap or whatever. And we would make the mistake early on, and we'd go in and we'd say, yep, 300 pieces a minute times 60 pieces an hour, or times 60 minutes an hour. I'm going to do my calculator. I used to know this off my head. Times an 8-hour shift, we can make 144,000 bottles of soap for you a day, customer. Never, ever, ever. Do you know how many terrible conversations I have had in my life telling you, like, hey, remember when we said we'd give you this many units this month and you placed an order for this and you planned your forecasting and your demand off all these things? Yeah. Sorry, right? And so it goes into it, right? Is you can never plan at 100% capacity because things happen, right? You have downtime, all these other things pop up. People walk off the line for you, Jeremy. People are out sick. They can't work those hours. So you've got to find where that balance is, where it's like, yeah, we're going to plan at 80%. And again, knowing you got to push people a little bit, right? Sure, you can plan them at 60%, and then they're going to operate at 55. Sure, you're going to plan them at 80, and then they're going to like, there's always a little bit back and forth on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got a
How
question.
about for you, Jeremy? I mean, I know how it affects a tech day to day. How does it affect a product manager?
For me, if I don't have proper durations in there, it'll just throw my whole day. It may even throw my whole week out if I'm now having to scramble to either get someone out there, get something back up and running that I potentially broke through the project that wasn't supposed to break. It's just it moves us out of the preemptive mode and into a reactatory mode. And we anytime that you're in a reactory mode, you're not going to be operating at 100%. It just never happens. So whether it's we're working in a customer environment and our templates don't match their environment, things like that, as long as we put some buffer time into the task and the execution of that task, when those small issues pop up, it's not going to derail the whole project. It gives us that time to look at what's going on, figure out what we need to do, get it fixed, and then get stuff moving forward again.
Yeah, you made a great point. I said customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction is just as important, right? You're going to burn people out.
Oh
planning
yeah.
at 100%, right? I'm going to throw your week off. I'm going to pull you in from this, pull you in from that. You don't know where you're at any time of the day. You're going to get burned out quick.
If I have, three major, projects going on and I plan, Tuesday to make a change on one, Wednesday to make another change on another one, Thursday to make another one on that one. If something goes wrong on that first one, I have now just derailed two additional projects because I have to put my focus on getting that other client back up and running. So having that duration, knowing, what projects have those milestones, have those riskier tasks, and then making sure that you're not putting them too close together overall on your scheduling, on your budgeting. It goes a long way to maintain sanity as a project manager. I definitely don't want to have to put in a 20-hour day.
No, we got a really good question in there.
I didn't see the question. I mean, I see the chat, but I don't see the new question.
I got it. I can read it. You want to read it, Colleen? Or you want me to read it?
Sure, let's see if I know how to read now because I couldn't
I
earlier.
can do it. I'm a good reader. I can read good.
All right.
So Alfonso, who was out of Georgia, said we work with GCs, general contractors, I'm assuming is what that means, on IT infrastructure projects, but we only include the build time for the project duration. Quick pause. This is a little bit what I was talking about earlier. Some people in some industries, all they care about is duration, right? But we do not include the meeting time, change order time, delivery time, customer calls, logistics in the overall duration. Should we be billing for this time? If so, how should we include this time in the overall cost estimate? What metric should we use for billing? So a couple things to unpack there. Jeremy, yeah, go for it.
That'll vary on your business organization. I've worked for some organizations to where, I mean, anything that, the engineer, project manager does, it's billable. Like everything is billable. Being in the MSP space, because we have a lot of agreements with the customers already, a lot of our sales engineering, project pre sales engineering, account management is all kind of covered underneath that managed service agreement. So what we usually do on that will attach those time records, attach those items to that agreement. That way we don't bill for it extra. On top of we mostly will do fixed fee projects where this is just the cost of the project. Anything that's within that project isn't going to get billed extra. There are times where we do time and material or like a do not exceed bill where anything there is going to get billed back to it on it. So it just varies on your organization, I think, and what you guys need to do it. I'll also recommend that you take a look at your local state and local laws on that. There's some things that you can and cannot bill for on some things with some things. So I let the upper management people deal with all that.
Yeah, it's like some of those things, the meeting time, change order time, delivery, customer calls, logistics. I probably, depending on like if they're key meetings, I wouldn't include those in the duration, right? Because it's the GCs, it's getting the infrastructure built out. That's the actual timeline of that overall project. Should you be billing for it? It depends on how you're selling it. Like Jeremy said, it depends on your organization. It depends on what the customer is willing to accept. What I always like to say though is however you're doing it, however you're selling it, whoever's selling it, communicate that to the operations team, right? If you go to them and you're like, hey, I know that there's going to be an extra 20 hours worth of meetings on this project, right? We've got it baked in. We accounted for that in our margin because we're bumping it into the SG&A or whatever that is, however you look at it. Just communicate that to the operations team. If you don't, that causes heartache and butting heads between there. And you're like, right? Because then they're getting asked, why are you so far over budget on this? And you're like, I don't know. Because I'm having to meet with the customer every single week because sales told them we would, and I didn't know that, right? So however you're doing it, just make sure everybody's clear on that one. Would be my recommendation. And then going into that same too, we got another question in the chat about understanding that baked in duration, the unknowns of people out sick, etc. How do you handle the duration without creating too much of a barrier for entry when you're selling the project? The customer wants it, right away.
That's, we have a really good sales team. The bulk majority of our projects come from in-house customers, as well. We do occasional, projects being subbed out by other MSPs. We occasionally have some consulting firms come in and want us to do a bigger project that, we've got better scoping, understanding of the solution than what they do themselves. So, when it comes to when they want it today, a lot of times you got to pump the brakes and communicate with the customer. There's almost not a single project I've ever worked on that has started same day that the customer signs the dotted line, even the next day. It's just that's asking a whole lot if you ask me. Again, it goes back to just communicating with the customer. If you have good forecasting of what you've got already booked, what isn't booked but or scheduled but is on the books and needing to be completed, you will have a good idea of when that project will actually start. And it's just honest communication. You might have a customer that gets upset that like, oh, I have to have this starting tomorrow. But if it's not something that you can actually commit to and do, you're going to have a pissed off customer at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you saying to them? How are you balancing that? Are you nice enough but honest enough to where getting your message across and they're not too upset, your customers?
Um, we're usually pretty firm about when we're going to be able to start a project with the client, especially if it's something where there's a backlog of projects already on the board being worked, and let's just say today is the 20th of February, and those projects aren't going to schedule to complete until June. Um, we'll let them know, hey, we're most likely not going to be able to start this until first, second week of June. If things get done ahead of time, we're able to close out these projects that are already open and being worked. And we'll be more than glad to start that ahead of that. But it's just, again, honest communication. With us, being an MSP and most of our projects come from our MSP customers, I don't think I've had a single client get upset with us when we've had to tell them, yeah, we're 3 months out before we can even start. They've all seemed to be very happy to go ahead and sign on the dotted line today because they know pricing can change. We ourselves have like, I think it's like 21 days that we'll let a proposal be open to a client before it has to be looked at again, re-looked at. Could be exact same thing that goes out, but hardware prices change. We may have had another similar project close and did a postmortem and realized, oh, we're missing hours here, and we'll get that factored back in. But
Yeah. I've asked this question to some others before, Jeremy. Have you ever done any fees or extra charges to customers? And we're like, hey, I need this started next week. And you're like, okay, well, you got
yes.
to pay the skip the line fee.
Yep, we definitely have an expedite fee on that. We've had like one customer use it in like the past 5 years.
Huh,
Uh,
okay.
and it was just, they went and bought another company, and they needed some things done immediately. So we got it working for them. It definitely didn't start next day for them. But it definitely did allow them to kind of cut in line, which did add a lot of extra work for us because we had to reschedule, rework other clients and their projects that were already working to make room for this rather large project that kind of had to muscle its way in.
Yeah. How about how like what do you I would think that you're doing your QBRs, you're doing your regular reviews with customers, and they're like, hey, like what do you have planned over the next year that's going to lead to big projects to try to get in front of that? And hopefully out of those conversations they would say, well, we're going to acquire this company. And you're like, okay, have you thought about the IT side of that? Right.
Yep, and definitely we have those conversations. We meet either quarterly or every other quarter, I guess biannually, with our clients to again go over, where they're heading, high level IT, upcoming things that could affect the business. We let them know on upcoming things that we're doing that could affect them, new solutions, new things, all that type of stuff. Usually we get really good feedback from our customers on that, but there's just times where something that, they got to move fast for whatever merger or acquisition to actually happen. And, you
Yeah.
know, they may have it signed on the dotted line before they even get a chance to talk to us. And again, those are kind of good problems to have, I think. Nothing though, at the end of the day, at least in the MSP world where I'm working at, nothing, projects wise is, life or death. So, when things get delayed, or pushed back, or we're not able to start the very next day, it's not really affecting much anything other than someone just wanting it done to have it done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of it too is a little bit of tacit knowledge where you understand your customers and a little bit of like, okay, these are the projects we have in the hopper with the customers that we're working with. Like if I move something on this one customer, they're a flight risk kind of deal. These other people, yeah, it's kind of just needs to get done when it gets done, but they've got an office move. I can't. So there's a lot that goes into it. I know I'm beating around the bush here for you, Steve, but it is going to be a little bit of tacit knowledge for you, organization by organization. Us internally, we manage it all the time too. Talking from personal experience here, we've got feature requests all over the place from people and things and what works and who's coming up on renewal and who's at risk and all these different types of things. But it's going to change for everybody. You just got to take all of those factors into account. They want it today, and you go, okay, if I don't give it to them today, then they're probably going to leave. Then I probably need to figure out how to make this happen, right? I know I hear a lot in the MSP industry about people firing clients, right? People want to stick with break fix models and they don't want to go to the managed recurring. And that customer comes to you with a fix project and you've been tired of them and they're hurting your margins. And you go, maybe I'm going to use this project as my thing to say, no, sorry, we can't do it for you and see if they bounce, right? And say, this is why we want you to get to the recurring model. So
Yeah.
again, I live in a pretend world. But we have a lot of those conversations, right? Product wise and software wise on our side.
And you nailed it right on the head. Yeah, and again, at the end of the day, it really boils back down to just communication. If you've got a client that's being pushy and demanding of things, and it's a client that can get away with it, you're gonna have to figure it out. But otherwise, it's just communicating with the client on what you can do as an organization, what you can't do, and then what the timing, duration of when you can start that project, when you think it'll finish. And that's really the best you can do. Sometimes you will lose a sale on that, but a lot of times that's probably a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Speaking of customer communications, let's say your durations are set, they're looking good, and they're accurate. Now that you have accurate durations at your MSP, how is that changing the conversations you're having with your clients? What differences are you seeing?
um it's letting us know when we can give them a forecast of when we expect the project to actually close and be completed. We can let them know when the milestones are actually supposed to be there. That way, when we're having that initial call with them, they have a good idea of, around what time, their users may be impacted, around what time, we're going to be making big changes. They're already going to know that up front. They can already have conversations with their team, to let them know about the upcoming changes. That way, when we send out the big notices and stuff like that, it's not a big surprise to them, or anything. It's just like, oh, IT's just making all these changes again. They're better informed, of things. It also, lets them know if we're hitting the mark or not. If we hit that first phase and we're not completed with it by the time that we said it was, it's a good eye opener for the customer. That could be something to where, you didn't hit that phase one. We got to have a pause on this, talk about it. Do we want to continue? Just depending on what it is. Most of the stuff that I do, isn't on that side, but I know a lot of other MSPs that do development cycles with software and things like that. And yeah, if that phase one isn't being met, you may not have funding coming in for the next phases. So having those durations really lets you know where you're at on things. And again, for those that have, phased billing on projects, it lets you know how much of the risk is the rest of this project if we completely fail here, which is can be a biggie.
Totally. What are are some mistakes that MSPs are making when they're trying to set accurate durations? Like now they're intentional, they know they need to set durations and pay attention to them. What are some of those pitfalls that they see in the beginning?
Not adjusting current scheduling based off of what you just learned. So one of the second or third project I ran on Moovila, it was like the very first project that we ran. We went through templatized stuff. We went through and realized, oh, hey, we don't have enough hours on this. This also, this duration also needs to be extended out. That way we get better close dates. I updated on the template and then I didn't go through and update it on the other project that was already in mid execution on that. And again, we came up under budget on that of what we should have come up for, and then we missed our target date of the close date because I didn't update that duration as well. So it really puts a lot of focus back on the PM to ensure that the templates are good before you roll it out. And then, are you doing everything that you can on the management side to ensure that dates are being hit as you get to it, making sure that you're not going over budget when, it's a fixed fee project. So those are biggies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a one that, if you're doing your project review at the end and you're saying, okay, we're going to go update our templates, just add another step or checklist or whatever you call it in there that says any open projects that need to be adjusted based on learnings, right? So, oh yeah, hey, we forgot that for this application, we've got to do steps 1, 2, and 3 and let it run overnight for a couple days kind of deal. Like, oh shoot, yeah, we've got another one of those out there. Hopefully you've got some sort of categorization, portfolio management on types of your projects, identify those and adjust those as needed. That's a great call out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Lewis, you're saying to add a step, checklist item, whatever, on one project where you notice where the error occurred or the problem that's going to cause problems in future projects, and you're saying address it in this project so that you're reminded to go back later to fix your other projects that you'll see similar issues with.
Kind of. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Basically in that post-mortem, so that last thing that we do on every project where we go through, look at things, oh hey, we left off these steps on, when we're rolling out, this WireGuard VPN of, you got to do these things to make it work right. And if you don't go in and update the projects that you already have that are open in execution with those steps, you're just going to repeat the same mistake again. I don't know about you guys, but I tend to forget things after I go to sleep and wake up the next day. So if it's not written down in that template, it's not getting done. It's not getting done on an accurately every time that we do it. And then if I'm not the one that goes in and does it, how are they going to know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's again too what we talked about earlier. Things happen, right? Jeremy calls out sick, and somebody pops in to cover for him on that existing project, and if it's not in there, they're not going to go and look at the other project you know what I mean? So it's really just at the end of each project, you should have a task that's project review, and you've got your same steps in there where, hey, what went wrong? What needs to be adjusted? Do we update templates? And then the other one is, are there any existing similar types of projects that need to be updated?
Okay.
Yeah.
At what point do you realize it's time to update my template? My durations are consistently bad, or just assuming situations are one-offs?
The second project.
Oh,
So,
Yeah.
what I ended up doing when we came into Moovila, I took all my existing templates, pulled them in, made templates out of that. When we bring over an opportunity out of ConnectWise and import it into Moovila as a project, I go through and I just everything that came imported in, I just archive it off. And then I import my base template, and then I go import all my templates from there. So I'm getting all the analytics feeding back into my templates there. So again, every time that we're getting done with it, we look at the template layer as well as the project layer to see, did we succeed overall in this project? And then how do we compare against the templates? And then, yeah, that second time that we went over budget, we got to look at this. What's going wrong on that? Like the goal is to be slightly under budget for everything every time.
Yeah. I might say first time, right? When you do that review and you realize my durations are bad, and it could be where you go, well, that's just that customer because John over there, he's a crybaby and I gotta hold his hand and he takes a lot of extra time kind of deal, right? But it could be that you're not adjusting the template, but you're throwing yourself some sort of indicator in there for the next time you do that type of project that like, hey, be mindful of if customer wants extra meetings, it will extend duration of project 1 month kind of deal, right? So when you get that project, you apply that template, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that one. That one was brutal. I need to make sure I keep that in mind as we get into this for the different customer.
Okay.
Yep, and again, I put stuff like that into the template notes as well. That way, as we're deploying it, we get that note there. We can review it. Oh, yeah, we've got Bob over here. We're gonna have
Yeah.
to meet him every week on this. Just get it added in, and then you're looking good on that.
Mhm.
Okay. So ever circumstances where if it's a certain project you're running where you're like consistently, if the template's looking bad, durations aren't looking good for a minute, you're like, I want to update the durations to be this much longer. Do you have a rule of thumb at all with that, or is it just case by case, depending on the project?
Well, we look it over on each template there. So when we look at the template, we'll go back, look at the previous projects, understand like what went wrong. Did we not have the correct duration? Did we not have the correct time in there? Really analyze it. Go in, look at the steps. Look at each step and how long we say that should take. Because we go as far as going into the template into each task step of saying, hey, this tech, it should take them 2 minutes to go log into this firewall. It should take them an additional 3 minutes to add this network address object and, breaking it down individual steps like that. So we'll go back in and look at it and be like, oh, yeah, we had, this takes 2 minutes, but when you really have to sit there and go look at the logic, apply it to what's the customer environment, that 2 minutes is really 15 minutes. We'll get that updated and go through and look. So when we're having to do any type of review of templates, either because durations aren't being met, the task execution time is being exceeded, we will do a deep dive into that whole template because if one thing is slightly off, there could be other things that are slightly off too. And our whole goal is to get things so accurate to where sales comes in and builds a template out of Moovila to exactly what we're going to execute on, grabs the hours that they need off of it, and then goes and puts it into the proposal with little notes that we have on our templates. And that speeds up our whole sales to project execution pipeline because things should already be one-to-one lined up from the sales process to project side.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeremy. And of course, Lewis. If anybody, I mean, we're running out of time here. I got to point that out. If you have anything else that you need to add last minute, Lewis, you're more than welcome. I just want to let everybody know it's your last call to send anything in the chat if you have anything to ask these two. If not, I'm going to talk about next month's live stream, which is, drum roll please, how to price projects so they're profitable. Hooray. It's going
Jeremy
to be
just gave us a perfect transition into that one there.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. It's like he knew telepathically.
I mean, they go hand in hand. They really do. So
Yes, of course, of course. So that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be, oh shoot, I want to say Thursday, March 26th at 10 a.m. Okay. I'm going to, when I send my follow-up email with the recording of this, if you want to share it with anyone, that's good. I'll show you how to get in the community discords if you guys are interested in asking your peers questions too. I'll send that because that's how we met Jeremy, or at least how I met Jeremy was in the Discord. And it's going to be with Lewis and Jason Kane. He is a systems architect and senior engineer at CCP Tech. So,
Also very active
so
in Discord, which I can't believe we haven't had him on a webinar before.
I
But we
know.
will. We do need to, I think, probably later this year, not to play favorites too much, but we probably do need to get Jeremy and Jason on one too.
Oh man.
Yeah, that could
You
be.
too.
Jason's a great guy. He is again in the whole MSP geeks. Probably just one of the other really active people out there, very knowledgeable on all things IT.
Yes, absolutely. And he's always open to answer any questions you have about project management. I'm sure Jeremy also, whether it's
And
Moovila
me.
related or not. You
What's
too,
your
Lewis, but
question?
what time do you have to go check the Discord? Let's be real.
I'll
You
make
got more
it.
time for the Yoko book.
I already finished that one. I'm on to the next one.
All right, so maybe you have time now. Anywho, we have a survey. So after y'all log off and enjoy the rest of your day, because it is 1 o'clock, if you have any other pressing topics that you want to hear us talk about in the future, let us know. Give us any feedback about how this went. And we appreciate you all so much. Thank you, Jeremy, for your time. Thank you, Lewis, for your time. And thanks everyone else for showing up. I hope to see you next month.
Cool. Thanks, Jeremy. We appreciate the time. We know you're busy. Have a great weekend.
You
Yes, thank
guys,
you so
thanks for
much.
Cool.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Look at all the claps. Never seen so many
Thank you for
claps.
the claps. I love them.